So it's become a topic of discussion at this point. Should the Arizona Cardinals be targeting DeAndre Hopkins more, or making him a bigger part of the game plan, or just are they using him incorrectly in general? As for the targets thing, I don't really totally see that, because if you look at the total targets for the year, he's pretty high up there. He's top 5 in total targets, and he's currently only 11 behind Stephon Diggs. So he is behind, but it's not a wild difference. And in fact, if you look at times targeted per snap, he leads the league. So when he's out there, nobody gets targeted more than him per snap. So is he not getting enough targets? I don't really see it that way. But the other issue is, could he maybe not be getting used properly? Well, let's get into the breakdown and start off with a play like this. So this is going to be a zone coverage play, and what's going to happen is that Kyler's going to fake a handoff and then roll out to his right, and you have a couple players who could get open. Hopkins is going to be in motion. He's going to be underneath the coverage, and then you have a tight end who's going to run, and he could kind of get into a gap in coverage further over the middle. So those are the two routes that could work. I like this type of play against this coverage, but there's going to be something very interesting about how it's ran, because right now you're probably thinking, well, what does this have to do with anything? Sure, Hopkins is kind of a part of the route, but, this is a design play that typically works for tight ends to get open. But watch when this play starts. This is what I find interesting. Hopkins is looking back, as he should. He might get the ball here, but I don't even think it's a might. I think he's going to get the ball here no matter what, because Murray never looks towards his tight end, which in fairness, a lot of people do have the flat route being their first read on this play and then look deep, although personally I like deep and then look shallow. I think that makes more sense. But also, Murray's tight end, who he could throw to, is completely not even looking back. He's not expecting the ball whatsoever, which leads me to believe this was a throw to Hopkins all the way unless disaster happened. I actually think that there's a window that Murray could make this throw further deep, but it just looks like that wasn't what they were supposed to do. This seems like a play that was always going to go to Hopkins no matter what. Murray does, in fact, hit Hopkins, and, it's a fine gain. You get 5 yards, you'll take that, although Hopkins took a big hit at the end there. But still, that's a fine play. I just find it interesting how it seems like they are definitely making an effort to get him the ball. There's no shortage of those types of plays. This one's another one where, again, this is something sort of small, and I think that's kind of the main way they've gotten him a lot of targets. I think there's a reason why he has so many catches. The biggest reason is that he's just really good at football, but also part of it is some of these plays are very easy to get the ball to Hopkins. This one's just a cover one blitz right here, and Hopkins is running a quick slant route over the middle, which is great against this type of coverage. So it's already just a great situation. You have your best receiver running a really good route against this type of coverage. On top of this, you look at San Francisco, they're kind of in a little bit of it looks like they might have changed the play call at the line, and they're just trying to figure it all out, because right now they have a linebacker who's currently lined up against Hopkins, which is obviously not a good situation, so they're trying to fix this right before the ball is snapped, and it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to pull it off. But what I also find interesting is that the halfback who is lined up further towards the sideline, he's not even running a route. He's just stopping because he doesn't want to potentially get in the way of Hopkins. He's just trying to take a defensive player out of the play. That's all he's trying to do. And Hopkins is the only other eligible receiver on that side of the field. They're giving him space so he can get open, because against man coverage, he's going to get open a lot. Murray takes the snap. Hopkins does a really good route on that one, is able to get open, make the grab, and, again, it's nothing crazy, but he picks up a solid gain. So they do things like that a good amount, not just to Hopkins, to a lot of their receivers, but it does seem like there are ways they could get Hopkins the ball. Is that the best way to use DeAndre Hopkins? I mean, kind of. It's a really good one because he is great in open space, but there are other ways that he can be effective. I do think it's a fair criticism to say, hey, you see that when the Cardinals tend to not do well on offense, it tends to be because Hopkins is getting covered. I don't think it's necessarily so much because they're not getting Hopkins the ball enough. I think it's largely when teams play zone, it just makes Hopkins not as valuable. Like, for instance, a play like this. San Francisco is going to be playing zone coverage. They play a lot of zone coverage, and it really worked against Arizona, where they're playing zone. It's a cover 3 zone. You have Hopkins, who is to Murray's left. He's going to kind of run a route that can work against zone coverage. Both of the routes you see on the screen can work against zone. In man coverage, you wouldn't even be hesitating, you'd be looking Hopkins' way. But in zone, you can look in Hopkins' way, but it's not as big of a deal because oftentimes these are situations that get guys open, and it's not as big of a deal to have an elite receiver going up against zone coverage. So Murray takes the snap, and he fakes a handoff that really did nothing, and you see he could throw it to either one of these two guys. They're both relatively open. Neither is wide open, and I think he's just saying, well, hey, I'm going to throw it to the player to my right, since, yes, Hopkins is Hopkins, but, Murray is currently lined up to the hash marks that are closest to the top of the screen, so that way he's going to throw it to that side, since it's just less air yards it has to travel, and there is a bit more traffic towards Hopkins' way, so even though Hopkins is clearly the better receiver, he's not going to throw it there, and I think that's one of the real ways you can take him out of the play, and, teams aren't going to run man coverage too often against Kyler Murray anyways, because Murray can do such a good job of running. So, like, as you see, Murray just flips it up to the top of the screen because that was the better option, and in fairness, it got a first down. So we can sit here and say you should have thrown it to Hopkins. He could have maybe done more in open space. You're getting first downs. These plays are working for the most part, so it is understandable. As great as DeAndre Hopkins is, you do kind of have to play against the defense you're playing against, and if a team's playing a lot of zone coverage, running zone busters and trying to beat them that way sometimes makes more sense than just trying to hit DeAndre Hopkins every time, even though I think they could probably run their zone busters a little better than they do. I also want to talk about this one. This one was very interesting, I thought, where what's going to happen on this play is that, once again, it's zone coverage, and DeAndre Hopkins running a route that I love against this type of coverage. I've kind of been pounding the table for the Arizona Cardinals. Run these types of routes more. Teams like to play zone coverage, have a lot of crossing routes, and a crossing route with DeAndre Hopkins that's good against zone, this is a good situation on paper. I like it. Unfortunately, once the ball is snapped, this is going to be played pretty well by San Francisco. You notice a linebacker who's in coverage does a good job of staying deep and covering up around where Hopkins is. So I think good job by him. Really good play. And so, that happens sometimes. Sometimes defenders make good plays. Also worth mentioning, this is a 3rd and 11, so they weren't concerned about a run or anything, which definitely helped. But at this point, you notice that there's another linebacker who currently sees a halfback is a check down, and he's breaking in on a check down. And the issue with that is we don't know how long this play is going to go on for. So if Murray makes the throw immediately, well, then that makes sense. Get the tackle earlier and keep them out of field goal range. But obviously the issue is if this play goes on for a while, Hopkins is going to get open once he gets further towards the middle of the field. And you look at Murray, he has time. This offensive line, which I've criticized at times this year, but honestly at other times, I should be honest, they have looked great as well. They're inconsistent, but when they're on, they can play really well. And right here, Murray has time. And in a perfect world, Murray waits and he hits Hopkins down to field. Now, that's not what he's going to do. He ends up throwing the check down, and there's an immediate tackle, so just kind of disaster right there. Clearly the thought was, I'm going to throw this check down. We'll gain some yards. Maybe we don't quite get the first down, but we could at least get close to it, and then we could either kick a field goal or maybe even go for it. So there is logic. Again, I'm not going to kill Murray for it. I don't even necessarily think it's the wrong decision, but clearly if he threw it to Hopkins and just waited a second, Hopkins would have been open. And there are some plays like that where you could argue whether you want to take the check down or whether you want to throw the ball deep to Hopkins. Really, it just comes down to what kind of offense do you prefer to run. Personally, I like an offense that gets more explosives. I think getting the ball down the field quicker is crucial because so many things can go wrong in a large drive. So I do think that they probably should, in this situation, throw to Hopkins instead of taking the check down. But if you disagree, I'm not going to really be mad at you because it's just a matter of what do you value more. There really is logic on both sides, and I don't think it's that crazy. And finally, like a play like this is them getting the ball to Hopkins. It totally is. This is Hopkins has a one-on-one matchup. The safety is cheating over towards Hopkins' direction, but he's not over far enough, so Murray sees Hopkins has a go route, one-on-one matchup. He's going to take this opportunity as he should. These are the ones where every time you see this, you should throw it to Hopkins. And in fairness to Arizona, every time they have this situation, they pretty much do throw it to Hopkins. They very rarely, in man coverage, when Hopkins isn't getting doubled, don't throw it to Hopkins, which I think makes sense because he is so good. Murray takes the snap. He's going to not even hesitate. Hopkins wasn't open, but he fires it there anyways. Hopkins nearly makes the grab. It was honestly just a great defensive play by Barrett. So give him some credit. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing where that's a huge swing in the game. That's a touchdown if Hopkins makes the grab. And, there's a couple plays like that just didn't go his way, where usually they do. Hopkins usually makes those plays, and every now and then he's not going to make it, but they will give him the opportunities, and I think that that's the correct decision. And every now and then you're going to play a good defense that really played out of their mind against Arizona and got the victory. I think it's totally fair to say there are certain things you could nitpick, but I think a huge issue is just that really, Hopkins doesn't have a ton of great receiving teammates to work with. I'm sorry, Larry Fitzgerald is a legend. He's not what he once was. We all know this. He's still a valuable asset there, but, he's not what he once was. I think that's a much bigger issue than the way they're using Hopkins. Sometimes it looks a little clunky, but it usually looks a little clunky because for Hopkins to get open, oftentimes he has to just get open by himself because, again, Andy Isabella, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, these are all guys who I've liked in certain areas, but they're not guys who I like consistently. They're not guys when I watch their tape every single game and, every single sequence they're doing something. It's often not that case. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a much bigger issue. I think that the way that they're using Hopkins is fine, to be quite honest. There's other issues in this offense. I've talked a lot about that in previous videos. There's one I made about, it's called The Curious Case of the Cardinals Losing Streak. Definitely check that one out if you're a Cards fan, because that's sort of where I get into more detail about my concerns and my frustrations with Kingsbury. But quite frankly, I just don't think this is one of them. I think that Hopkins, he's a great player, and they get it to him as often as they can. And there's only so much you can do when everyone is trying to cover Hopkins and double team him and play zone to make it not as make his value not as great. So there's only so much you can do. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.